unless we're rudely interrupted by YouTube. So we've just had our first unexplained disconnection. This is part 2 of episode 20 of the EdTech Situation Room. Just talked about a NASA article for open content. Jason, your views on open content and NASA's leadership.
Well, I'm glad to see that particularly research organizations are doing this. One of the things that I think is absolutely critical, and I've seen a lot of press around this, so it's not a new opinion. But if the government's funding the research, it should be open. I mean, that's really the bottom line for me. And there's a lot of money that goes into research universities. I don't mind that there's technology transfer and those turn into businesses, and I think that's an important part of the research process, beginning to end. But if the people are funding it, then that should be open content and not in any way draw profit. And I'm sorry, not in any way draw profit with a closed system regarding research. And so, and I'm glad to see this particularly happening. I think that kind of leadership will become more and more important as, I don't think it's too nerdy or scientifically future looking to say, at some point, NASA is going to be important for more than just out there exploration, perhaps communication, transportation in the future. They will become the critical agency for. So I think it's a great movement.
Have you run into any paywall issues with your research or through the university links and stuff? Are you all good for everything you want to get for your dissertation?
The University of Montana subscribes to a substantial number of research databases, and so I've not run into an issue except for one article that I was not able to find a digital copy of, and so I end up ordering. So this is an interesting story. I end up ordering the book that it's in, and it's one of those kind of research guides that has several studies or journal articles. And the book showed up, and it was 2 inches thick, and actually sent me down some actually very fruitful rabbit holes related to my dissertation research, but. It was frustrating because it was a good article, and I have run into that only occasionally, but it certainly is if there was important research behind a paywall or something that was only available in a pay for print edition, I'd have to do it. So that's part of being a comprehensive researcher, is knowing what's out there, but it would certainly be frustrating.
When I was, stringing out my own dissertation as long as I possibly could for some weird reason, I didn't have the logins because I wasn't paying the university. Maybe I did, but anyway, there was a time where I wasn't as freely able to get stuff. So it's frustrating. And we're definitely living in times where, as a researcher and as a publisher, we have some choices about journals that we submit to, and possibly some choice, depending on which journal that is, what rights we're going to retain. For instance, if we're going to retain the right to publish our own articles on our own website, in addition to where they are. And I've been very disappointed by certain technology organizations that, have, I think, made a pretty big point of saying, hey, this paywall and this archive is the main way that we're making money. And I don't think that's the right Mardi Gras float to be on when it comes to just information. And, I'm one of the people, probably among many, who's very inspired with every time I hear Jimmy Wales say, our goal is to provide access to, the world's information. He says it more eloquently than that, but open access to so much information. And again, for schools, this should make a difference, right? We do have access to a whole lot, but we've got a long way to go when it comes to the ivory tower and academia. And we see some folks pushing the boundaries with open journals and things like that. But in general, I think we see a lot of stasis and status quo when it comes to academic publishing. Maybe not. I'm not as into that as you are. So, all right, what's next?
Let's see. I'll share an article about something that I am quite sad about. Engadget and a number of other technology sources reported on August 19th that Google plans on phasing out Chrome apps on the Windows and Mac platform. And also, I know this from another article, Linux operating systems will no longer have Chrome apps. And it's funny because I read this article, and it said that Google's argument for getting rid of this was that very few people actually utilize This is a platform, so it's probably smart for me to describe what that is. Right now, if you utilize the Chrome browser, you can download what are called Chrome apps. And Chrome apps are programs that run through your browser, but actually have an icon, and you can put them in your icon tray. You can utilize them like you would an app on your computer. And in fact, you can run them without even have the Chrome browser running. And I utilize that. There are 6 or 7 Chrome apps that I fairly frequently use. And what I like about it is that I can, sign into my Chrome account on a Chrome browser and get access to these 6 or 7 apps without having to go to, a website to install them. And I'll give you a couple of examples. There's a great system or system statistic Chrome app called System that allows me to see what the CPU is, how much RAM there is, what the resolution of the screen is. That's information that's not necessarily readily available on all machines. I can simply sign into a Chrome browser and then get access to that. If you've ever used a Logitech unified receiver, this is an example of one for those of you that are watching this on video. This allows you to hook up multiple Logitech devices to a single USB hub, and there's an applet you can download that helps program these little receivers. And you can download it for Windows or Mac, and there's a beautiful Chrome app that allows you to do that from scratch. You don't have to install it at all. It's just in your Chrome browser. You click on it, and you're good to go. And my favorite plain text editor, which is oddly enough called Text, is a Chrome app. And so even though Chrome apps will still be available on the Chrome OS system, which it kind of has to be because they've kind of built this notion off of web apps being the core of the Chrome experience, those same apps will no longer be available on your desktop computer. So I guess 2 points to this. One, there is some personal sadness to this note because I like this system. I thought it was brilliant. It allowed me to install a half dozen or so applications that I use frequently on every machine with, literally just logging into my Chrome system. But secondarily, it goes back to a point we've made at least a half dozen times on this show. You can't rely on free as a long-term strategy as an end user. So, if I were a tech director and I had found a Chrome app, there's a couple of wonderful integrated development environments or IDEs that maybe you were utilizing in programming classes or something along those lines, and it was easier, probably a lot easier than installing software from scratch. You're just pushing out via, like a Google Apps for Education Chrome browser piece. That's not going to be available at some point in the future. So, I read maybe that less than 1% of users were utilizing that feature. So I guess maybe the other notion tonight is I am the 1%. But
in many ways, not just this, probably.
Yeah, no kidding. But at the same time, like that has to be millions of users, right? But that's, for a big company like Google, it's not enough to maintain apparently. So sadness is wafted across my laptops.
So consider please sharing a Geek of the Week maybe down the road about more of that Logitech stuff, because that's pretty cool. I tracked with that a little bit, but I'm not fully comprehending all that you're doing. It's so interesting to see what Google is doing and how they're moving in the marketplace. A week or two ago, we'd shared the article about how the Android apps are coming to many Chromebooks, not all Chromebooks, but many of them. And I don't know if this has happened to you, but I find myself trying to touch the screen of my regular MacBook laptop because I want to, and I've done this with the television too, like, oh yeah, I can't swipe it, or, I can't just touch it. So it's interesting to see how Google's positioning itself, how Chrome fits into that, and web apps. Another thing that would be a good topic probably is the difference between extensions, add-ons, apps. And I think I've heard people at a Google Summit talk about that. And I know we could Google it and find out. But anyway, that's something I'm not completely clear on. I do know that the extensibility of our browsers is incredibly important. I was helping our elementary music teacher today with her new Apple TV and her iPad, and I was cringing when we were on the YouTube app for iOS because we couldn't stop the ads. But, we were back on her computer. I was helping her build her first playlist on YouTube, which is very exciting. And we installed what's it called? uBlock Origin extension, which is a great ad blocker. And anyway, extensibility is huge. And so I don't know that I'm fully understanding why Google is phasing it out, but I guess that makes sense if there's just not a lot of people, using that, and there's other ways to get the functionality. So.
Yep. And, and it goes back to, Google's a company that makes money. And so if they're investing in a technology and it's not getting wide usage, it makes no sense. You could relate that to, I think we had pushed this article into this week as well. Chromebooks are starting to get more cachet. In fact, I read a great article 2 weeks ago from on CNET that basically said that if you're going back to school right now, don't buy a laptop. Instead, wait until the new Chromebooks are out that have guaranteed access to the Play Store, so you can run Android apps. Is that will revolutionize your computing experience and your Chromebook experience. And maybe with Chromebooks moving in that direction, apps don't make sense anymore because you can download actual Android apps from the Google Play Store. Yep. Which makes it a big difference. So that is also starting to fire up quite a bit as well.
So I'm going to take us to a actual video rather than an article. This one was from The Verge. I guess they had it in an article on my birthday on August 20th. Celebrated a birthday this last week. The space station gets a new parking spot. And man, this is so huge in terms of the commercialization of space. And a friend of mine, Gail Lovely's husband, who just retired from NASA last fall, actually was one of the main engineers down in Houston working on this. And this is the portal, the door, the hatch, the connector that allows for SpaceX and Boeing and potentially other commercial companies to go up to the ISS, to the International Space Station, and be able to dock. And this video explains that currently there really isn't docking. What there is getting in close, and then the astronauts on the ISS taking the arm and then pulling you in, and then coupling you with the station. This new docking system has been set up to theoretically allow for an unsupervised docking. So if something happened or whatever, I mean, you wouldn't have to have the arm and some astronaut on the ISS, pulling people in. They'd be able to come up, dock. One of these actually blew up on. It wasn't I don't know if it was the Falcon 9, which Falcon rocket it was that SpaceX had sent up. So they've got it up there successfully now. They have one. They want to go ahead and have a second one, so they have a backup. And I just think it's incredibly exciting. And I've said this before, in my passion and enthusiasm for STEM and teaching STEM, in 2013 to 2015, back in the classroom really will shine through, because one of my favorite things each week became curiosity links, and these were things to share with students. I tried to do no more than 10 minutes. A lot of times it was a video, but it was to spark some curiosity and some excitement. And amidst all the news that's happening, probably a lot of people have missed some huge headlines with space, like China landed on the moon with robotically, not with people, but they did that a couple years ago. And we just sent the Orion capsule like a year ago, December, into high Earth orbit, which was the first time we'd done that, I think, since the Apollo missions. And SpaceX is now working to get us to Mars. I mean, my son is his first week of school at Colorado School of Mines, where they have folks studying space mining, and the U.S. government has changed the law so that now companies that are U.S. based that find stuff on asteroids or on other planets can keep it. If you saw Avatar, part of that is coming true, where we have commercial companies that are going to be trying to mine things that are very plentiful out in the solar system, but maybe scarce here, whether that's helium-3 on the moon or other kinds of things. So this is an exciting development. It's something to share with kids. We cannot underestimate how important it is to help get kids excited about science, about exploration, about engineering, about all of those kinds of fields. And I was just loving this. And it's a nice 4-minute video that is kind of a news style, and they've got some explanations about what's going on, as well as interviews and great video. So awesome to check out.
Great. Thanks, Wes. Let's see. Actually, this is one from last week too that I kind of want to talk about for a moment. Yahoo was sold several weeks ago, and that's been its own story because it was taken over a couple years ago by a former Facebook executive or Google executive. Facebook, Google.
Marissa Mayer.
Yeah.
Google, yeah.
Yeah, right. Google executive. And they've been trying to kind of become relevant again, and it didn't necessarily work out. And the company that eventually bought them was Verizon. And the reason why, in my mind, that's interesting is because they have bought a number of properties in the past couple of years and now own a lot of content properties, which they did not before. And now suddenly they own what used to be the hottest tech property in the world, which is Yahoo. And so what's interesting about that is, in my mind, is that, we're still trying to figure out what new media looks like in 2016 as it relates to consolidation. The internet was supposed to be the great, equalizer of media companies, and as time has gone on, traditional media properties have started snapping up web properties as a means of having control over multiple parts of the kind of publishing universe. But the fact that core technology companies, or Verizon's not a content company, and yet they now own one of the oldest standing web content companies on Earth, is an important development and something we should keep our eyes on. Wes, do you use Yahoo anymore? Is that still relevant to you at all?
Gosh, I mean, I still have my Yahoo account from the standpoint of Flickr. I mean, I've got two-step authentication on my account. We have a person we know in our church who's been hacked like 4 times on our Yahoo account, and it's just like, I don't know what they're doing with security these days. I abandoned that account a number of years ago. I still probably have a few websites and things that are connected to it, but it's not that relevant in my world today. I do think that article, though, is fascinating because they've said to shareholders they're trying to become a digital media company. They see all of these mobile screens, back to Article 1 from this show, all these mobile screens as a huge opportunity for delivering content and advertising and being able to monetize. I think this article talks about also the decline in bandwidth. And I'll note, I've got to cancel. I've had a Verizon hotspot for probably 5 years. And the whole time I've been paying $50 for 5 gigs of data. That price has not gone down. But we've moved as a family to T-Mobile, and dumped AT&T because there's so much more bandwidth that we can get, with a competitor. So companies like Verizon, and probably we'll see this happen with AT&T and others, are seeing plateaus in their cellular revenues, and we're actually seeing some decrease in prices. And so I think it's a great thing for creativity and the creation of content for the web. The fact that they're probably going to be trying to produce independent shows. We have Netflix, we have YouTube, we've got a lot of different players. I think it's a better day than ever for creatives in terms of not just having major networks and Hollywood in the traditional sense, maybe being your on-ramp to fame or to even just a livelihood. People are tired of Wes, I don't know what the right way to say this is, but, just hoping that Flickr doesn't go away. But in all
Yeah.
likelihood, we've heard you say just about every time, don't rely on free tools. And they have charged it and monetized it in some ways. But
Yep.
that's unfortunately going to probably be a part of the future. Is we're gonna hear about Verizon saying Verizon dumps Flickr. I mean, that'll be a horrible day. I will fly a black flag on my Twitter account when that happens.
One other note, and I did not call this until I kind of tossed it back to you. The other major media company that Verizon bought was AOL. Also, at one point, a hot property as the main conduit of getting people online, and then pivoted, tried to pivot a couple of times, and then finally successfully pivoted into becoming a media company as they started buying up undervalued web properties, and now they own an impressive number of blogs and other traditional media, new media companies that are publishing. And so, Yahoo is going to, Verizon's going to own a pretty serious part of kind of the new media web. And, I guess maybe the upside of that for me is that it probably means that even more effort's going to go into making that content portable, by making sure it works great on small screens, although I don't think that's been that big of an issue for most modern blogs, but it certainly is something to think about. And, consolidation is certainly challenging industries.
Yeah, and they talked about in the article as well how they're merging. These two purchases are tied because the AOL technology, as far as advertisements and monetizing, and then Yahoo having these properties. So maybe that's going to be good for the long-term survival of Flickr. Hopefully, they're not going to ruin it if they find ways to send more ads and things like that. But it's a merger of those two worlds. And if we want to connect our articles and connect the dots, it's back to, if you're not paranoid, you're crazy as far as privacy. A huge part of this brave new age that we're in is big data, is companies being able to harvest information and utilize it to sell to advertisers. We are the product for most of the free web services, and then even some that we pay for. And there are careers that are being built and made, and that will be built and made in this world of web advertising, data analytics, coding, all of these things that go hand in hand with these companies and these kinds of announcements. So where's the STEM club at your school? Where's the computer science? Are you making computer science cool? Is it cool to be a geek at your school? It should be. We should really be celebrating kids that have, aptitudes and skills. I didn't drop the article in this week, but there were a couple more articles, of course, about hacks. We had the Democratic National Committee, or the DNC, get hacked supposedly by Russians, and then the FBI, I think there was an article about them being hacked. And it's just we got to have we got to raise up a generation of individuals that are going to have great tech skills and are going to be white hats to use their skills for good and not for evil, to protect us from all these nefarious and malicious things that people would like to do to us.
Okay, well, I think we're nearing the top of the hour, so I would suggest maybe we do our Geeks of the Week. Wes, why don't you start us off on a product, or at least a brand name that I love personally. Go ahead.
Absolutely. My Geek of the Week is the Anker Bluetooth Folio keyboard case for iPad Air 2. Had an opportunity this summer, and as we've kicked off school, to order a few more iPads for faculty. We have our English department, 7 faculty, that used a really cool app called Harkness, which I hadn't heard of before. It's a discussion app that's based on a pedagogy of mapping the discussion that's happening in the room. So you identify, who's being quiet or who's dominating, etc. But of course, having an iPad, there's all kinds of other things besides just this Harkness app that they can do. And so I was looking for a good Bluetooth case and keyboard that would be reasonably affordable. We've been paying $30 to $40 per case, and this case is $36. It's been very well received. It says in the last 6 months, if you use it 2 hours a day, I'm sure they're using it a lot more than 2 hours a day, but it has a long charge. And Anker is a company, I don't know if I heard about it from you or someone else, but we have our chargers in the car from Anker. They're smart in terms of knowing if you've got an iPad or that has a higher amperage need or a phone.
Yep.
We've got a multi charging station in our kitchen that's Anker. So great case if you're looking for something. And I still honestly think for schools, the iPad 2 is a great purchase. We have not purchased any Pros yet. You can't use the pencil that's Apple stylus, but there's lots of really good styluses. The Adonit Jot Pro is my favorite for sketchnoting. So anyway, if you're looking for it, I think iPad 2, but go 64 gig, don't go 16 gig, and go for that $36 case. It's working great for our teachers, and I'm probably going to be ordering more when I have a chance to order more teacher iPad cases.
Great, and I would give another shout out to the Anker brand name. Go to Amazon, look for Anker equipment. I've never gone wrong buying cables and chargers, and I have a Bluetooth speaker that I've picked up from Anker, and it's cheap enough to to not worry about it if it ends up breaking on you or getting lifted or whatnot, but still high quality enough to be able to rely on as a day-to-day device. And that's been one of the great things about, there's about a half dozen peripheral companies that make chargers and cables and chargers and cables and Bluetooth speakers, and then will oftentimes move out into things like a phone and tablet cases, and it's really increased the quality and brought down the price, I think, of that on Amazon. So I'd like to share with you this week, I've mentioned this earlier on, but I've now published my longer article on the Tech Savvy Teacher blog on Cloud Ready. So I would refer you to blog.ncce.org, which is where I publish a blog post related to educational technology, but it's a pretty extensive post. But basically, Cloud Ready, for those of you that don't know about it, is a Chromium OS install that allows you to turn a laptop into a Chromebook-like device, and their brand name for that is Cloud Ready. And I've mentioned this in some detail before, so that's I won't go into it in great detail here because the blog post does a pretty good job at it. But I did this summer, as part of an experiment, search around eBay, and I picked up two laptops, one for about $50 and one for $70. I dropped in an SSD drive in both that would have cost used $15, $20. New, larger one new would have been only $30. So we're talking about both of those devices being $100 or less. And using Cloud Ready, I turned them both into wonderful, fast, responsive Chrome devices. And in fact, the smaller one, it's a little 12-inch Lenovo, 6-year-old 12-inch Lenovo, first generation i5 processor, a netbook or ultrabook or whatever you want to call a 6-year-old tiny laptop, and it's better than the commercial Chrome devices that I've used or reviewed or purchased. And it's fast and responsive and amazing. And so you can do some advanced things and dual boot with Windows and yada yada yada. But my advice would be to find an older laptop. Pull the hard drive, throw an SSD drive in if you've got the tech savvy to do that. If not, buy an old laptop for $50 and teach yourself that way, right? It's a good skill to have, I think, and you can turn that into a fast, responsive Chromebook. So blog.ncce.org, and enjoy that long post.
Awesome. I want to close with a shout out to Marta, who is a librarian in Tegucigalpa, Honduras. She tweeted us with the hashtag EdTechSR on August 17th, saying she just saw episode 19 and said it was always worth your while. So Marta, thank you. We appreciate the shout out. We would love for you to share our podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at EdTechSR. Find us online at edtechsr.com, where we have links to the MP3, the 32 kilobit, relatively small versions of our hour-long shows that you can download to your favorite podcatcher. And you can also access the YouTube versions, which this one may stay in two parts, or maybe I'll combine them and re-upload. So you can find me, Wes Fryer, at wfryer on Twitter. My blog is speedofcreativity.org. And here in a couple weeks, I will be starting off a STEAM club with Megan Thompson, who is our elementary art teacher. Very excited about that. And we'll be sharing from our Cassidy STEM Twitter channel as well, if you do not have enough Twitter things from me and the regular channel. So Jason, you want to take us out and tell us where everyone can find you in addition to your wonderful NCCE blogging?
Sure. I am on Twitter at TechSavvyTeach. I do post usually 15 to 20 links a week of something that I'm reading that I find interesting. I will tell you that probably for the next few weeks, I'm looking forward to my Android Nexus 6 phone to get the newest version of the Android operating system, Android Nougat, or Android N for those that don't like the name Nougat. But I will be talking probably a lot about how that's impacting my phone. And then, of course, I do blog at blog.ncce.org.
All right. And I'm going to do this tonight when I post. I'm going to put a quick little survey. If you have stayed to the bitter end of our episode 20, we're just going to do a quick little Google form to find out a little bit about you and anything that you would like to let us know about the show, anything in particular that you would like to hear us talk about more. This show continues to be an experiment, and we're talking about possibly maybe joining some networks, or at some point, who knows, we may explore advertising or whatever. I don't know. It's fun. I always learn new stuff from Jason, and we appreciate you in any way you can share the show. But thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another round of educational technology news and analysis from Missoula, Montana, and Oklahoma City.